Hi Reddit. This is going to be long, but I feel like I need to get the whole story out. I had a baby recently, and instead of spending these first days adjusting to motherhood, I'm stuck replaying everything that happened with my husband and his family. My emotions are all over the place, and I'm questioning myself, so buckle up. A little background story. My father-in-law is very old school, controlling kind of man. He's the type who thinks everything was better back in his day. He believes men are supposed to be the leaders and women are supposed to be obedient. He constantly makes little digs at me about how I should dress, how I should cook, how I should serve my husband better. It's exhausting. I usually ignore him because arguing with him is pointless. The problem is, my husband grew up under this man's thumb. My husband is not a bad person in general. He can be sweet, funny, and caring. But when it comes to his dad, it's like he reverts back to being a kid, desperate for approval. He listens to whatever his dad says, even when it's obviously harmful. We've had fights about this before, but I always told myself it would get better once we built our own family. I thought fatherhood would push him to step up and finally break free of his dad's control. Then I got pregnant. My pregnancy was not easy at all. From the beginning, I had complications. I had horrible morning sickness that lasted well past the first trimester. I developed gestational diabetes, which means constant monitoring of my diet, checking blood sugar multiple times a day, and stressing about every single thing I ate. I was constantly uncomfortable. My feet swelled up so badly I could not wear normal shoes. I had back pain that made it hard to sleep, and I felt like my body was not even mine anymore. Towards the end, my doctor started talking seriously about delivery. She went over my chart and explained that my pelvis shape, combined with the baby's size, made normal delivery risky. There was a strong possibility of labor, stalling, or me ending up in an emergency situation. She recommended scheduling a C-section to avoid that. She did not force me, but she made it clear this was the safe choice for both me and my baby. I actually felt relieved when she said that. I'd been dreading a long labor that could turn into an emergency. I wanted what was safest, so I went home and told my husband what the doctor said. That is when he told me he needed to check with his dad. At first I thought he was joking, but no. He actually called his father, explained everything, and then came back to me repeating his father's words almost verbatim. His dad apparently told him that I was just being dramatic, that women these days are lazy, that childbirth is supposed to be painful and difficult, and that real mothers do not opt out. He said my husband needed to man up and not let me take the easy way out. And my husband agreed with him. He came back to me and said he thought his dad was right, that a C-section was unnecessary and that I just did not want to go through the work of natural birth. He said women have been doing this since the beginning of time without surgery. He said I needed to toughen up. He was not even listening to me or the doctor, just parroting his dad. I can't even describe how betrayed I felt in that moment. I was 9 months pregnant, uncomfortable, exhausted, scared. He was calling me lazy. I was not asking for something frivolous. I was not asking for a vacation or a luxury. I was following medical advice for the safety of me and our child. And he could not even support me in that. That night, I lay awake in bed and realized something very harsh. If I could not trust my husband to back me up on something this important, then I could not trust him at all. If he would rather obey his father than protect me and our baby, then what was the point? So I made my decision. I called my doctor the next day and confirmed the C-section. I asked my mom to be my support person. I told the hospital staff that only she would be allowed in, and I stopped telling my husband anything about the timeline. I did not tell him the scheduled date. I did not tell him when I went into the hospital. When the day came, my mom drove me in. I was nervous, but also calm, because I knew I was finally in safe hands. The surgery went well. The doctors and nurses were kind and professional. My daughter was born healthy, and hearing her first cry was the most beautiful sound I've ever experienced. I cried too, partly out of relief and partly out of joy. For the first time in months, I felt like everything was going to be okay. While I was in recovery holding my newborn, I kept thinking about my husband and his father. I thought about how, during the scariest and most vulnerable moments of my life, the man who was supposed to love me unconditionally had chosen his dad's outdated macho nonsense over me. And I thought about how I could never forgive that. And that's when the idea for the card came to me. When I was ready, I took a blank card and pressed my daughter's tiny foot into ink. I stamped it onto the paper, her perfect little footprint, and underneath I wrote, "Thanks for turning your son into a single sore loser at 35. I mailed it to my husband and father-in-law. That was my goodbye. The backlash has been intense. My husband has been blowing up my phone with angry messages, demanding to know how I could cut him out like that. His parents are calling me a heartless witch, saying I've ruined their family. Even some mutual friends think I was too harsh with the card. But my mom says I did the right thing. She says my daughter and I are safe. And that is what matters. She says I do not owe anyone an apology for choosing survival. Still, I keep second guessing myself. Was I too extreme? Did I overreact? Should I have given him another chance, or was this the moment that proved who he really is? I do not know. All I know is I'm sitting here, holding my baby, staring at her tiny face, and I feel both stronger and lonelier than I ever have. So, Reddit, tell me, AITA for leaving my husband right after giving birth and sending that card to him and his dad? Update 1. Hi everyone. I did not expect my original post to get so much attention. Reading through the comments was overwhelming, but in a good way. It gave me a lot of clarity and honestly, validation I did not realize I needed. I thought I'd come back with an update because things have developed since then. So after I sent the card, my husband showed up at the hospital anyway. I had not told him the date, but he must have guessed from the silence. He tried to get into my room, but the nurses held firm since I had made it clear he was not allowed. I could hear him yelling in the hallway while I was holding my newborn, and I just remember thinking how insane it was that this was his reaction. Not, "How's my wife?" or "How's my baby?" but anger that he was not in control. Security ended up escorting him out. When I was discharged, I went home with my mom. She's been staying with me and helping with the baby, and I do not know what I'd do without her. Those first nights were brutal. Sleep deprivation, hormones, healing from surgery. But every time I looked at my daughter, I felt grounded. She's worth all of it. My husband, meanwhile, has been spiraling. He alternates between begging me to take him back and sending nasty messages about how I've ruined his life. He has not once apologized for siding with his dad or calling me lazy. Every apology is wrapped up in blaming me for embarrassing him. His father is even worse. He left a voicemail saying that if I was a real wife, I'd be trying to rebuild the family, not tear it apart with feminist nonsense. I did not even bother replying. Legally, I've started the separation process. My mom got me in touch with a lawyer who specializes in family law. Right now, custody is the big question. I'm not trying to cut him out of our daughter's life completely, but I also do not feel comfortable with him having unsupervised time with her when he still parrots his dad's ideas about women. My lawyer said courts usually favor shared custody unless there's serious risk. But she also said the fact that he did not show up for her birth and is now unstable could work in my favor. We'll see. Emotionally, I feel a mix of relief and grief. Relief that I trusted myself and did not let them bully me into risking my health. Relief that my daughter came into the world safely, but also grief for the marriage I thought I had. I keep thinking back to our wedding, to the promises he made, to how excited we were when we found out I was pregnant. I wanted a partner. Instead, I got a man who let his father call the shots in my delivery room. The card has become kind of infamous in my family. Half of them think it was hilarious and perfect, and the other half think it was cruel, but honestly, I do not regret it. It was the one moment where I felt like I had power again after months of being dismissed and talked over. It was a reminder that I was not powerless. I was choosing myself and my daughter over their toxic nonsense. My daughter is thriving. She's tiny, but she's strong. She grips my finger with surprising force, and every time she does, I think about the future I want for her. One where she grows up seeing women stand up for themselves, not bowing to outdated, harmful ideas. That thought keeps me going when the guilt and second guessing creep in. So that's where things stand. I'm a single mom now. Earlier than I ever expected, but I feel strangely calm about it. I'd rather raise her alone in peace than with someone who thinks my body and choices belong to his father's approval. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your words really did help me see that I was not crazy for leaving. Update 2. Hi again, Reddit. Buckle up because things got a whole lot messier since my last post. I did not think that life could get any more dramatic, but my soon-to-be ex and his father apparently decided to treat this whole situation like a game they could win by sheer stubbornness. Spoiler, it backfired. So, quick recap for those who did not see the original. My father-in-law called me lazy for needing a C-section, told my husband to man up and deny me the surgery, and my husband completely sided with him. I booked the surgery anyway, gave birth with my mom by my side, and sent my husband and father-in-law a card with my daughter's footprint that said, "Thanks for turning your son into a single sore loser at 35. Since then, things have been a roller coaster. After my first update, I started legal proceedings for separation and custody. I thought my husband would calm down once lawyers got involved, but instead, him and his father doubled down. They decided to fight dirty. My husband tried to argue in court that I had unilaterally excluded him from the birth and that it showed I was not willing to co-parent. His father even submitted some bizarre written testimony about how I was corrupting the sanctity of motherhood by choosing surgery. My lawyer shredded them both. She basically told the judge that medical decisions are between patient and doctor, not meddling relatives. The best part? My medical records back me up completely. They clearly showed the risks, the doctor's recommendation, and that the C-section was not just a whim, but a necessary precaution. The judge looked unimpressed with my husband's whole argument. At one point, my husband tried to frame himself as excluded from his rightful role as head of the household. The judge cut him off and reminded him that courts do not recognize head of household authority in custody matters. Watching his face turn red was honestly chef's kiss. Meanwhile, my father-in-law has been losing his mind. He called my mom's house so many times we had to block him on every phone. He sent a letter saying he planned to sue me for grandparent rights. My lawyer laughed out loud when I showed her. He has no standing, and all he managed to do was make himself look like more of a control freak. Here's the spicy part. During all this, it came out that my husband has been living with his parents again since I kicked him out. Apparently, he quit his job during my pregnancy because his dad told him it was demeaning to work under a female manager. So not only did he side against me on my medical care, but he also sabotaged our financial stability while I was pregnant. I had no idea because he kept telling me he was working from home. My jaw hit the floor when I found out. The man literally played video games in his old bedroom while I was at doctor appointments managing a high-risk pregnancy. The court obviously did not look kindly on this. When custody was being discussed, my lawyer pointed out that he had no stable residence of his own, no current job, and a history of putting his father's opinions above his wife's and child's well-being. Right now, he's been granted supervised visitation only. He gets 2 hours a week at a visitation center. He hates it. And his dad apparently goes with him every time, sitting there like some bitter chaperone. The staff at the center have already noted that my father-in-law tries to interfere during visits, and they've had to remind him the time is for my husband and the baby, not him. I'm not going to lie. The pettiness in me cackled when I read that in the report. As for me, I'm doing better than I ever thought I would. It's not easy being a single mom, but my mom is a rock star. And I've built a small but strong support system around me. Friends bring meals, neighbors check in, and mostly Reddit strangers giving me encouragement help more than I can say. My daughter is thriving. She's hitting all her milestones, and every time I see her smile, I know I made the right call leaving him. Emotionally, I've shifted from grief to anger to empowerment. At first, I mourned the marriage I thought I had, and then I raged at how easily he threw me under the bus. And now, I feel like I dodged the biggest bullet of my life. Imagine raising a child with a man who takes parenting advice from his father like it's gospel. Imagine trying to explain to my daughter why her dad thinks a woman's pain is laziness. No, thank you. The card, oh yes, the infamous card, has become somewhat legendary. My aunt actually framed a copy of it for me as a joke, and it's hanging in my hallway. Every time I walk past it, I smile. My husband apparently tells anyone who'll listen that it was the cruelest thing anyone has ever done to him. Honestly, if a snarky card is the worst trauma of his life, then he's had it pretty easy. My father-in-law has been telling people that I emasculated his son and ruined his manhood. What he does not realize is that every time he opens his mouth, he's proving my point. Because if manhood can be ruined by a woman making a medical decision for her own body, then maybe it was not much manhood to begin with. So yeah, things are spicy. Court is ongoing, but so far everything has tilted in my favor. My husband and his dad are scrambling to look like responsible people. But it's hard to do that when you're jobless, living at home, ranting about feminism in custody hearings. I'm just focusing on my daughter and on building a life without their nonsense. Do I feel bad sometimes? Sure. There are moments when I wish my daughter had a father who deserved her, but then I remember the hallway of the hospital where he screamed about being excluded while I held our newborn baby, and I remember the 9 months of being told to toughen up while my body was breaking down, and then I stopped feeling guilty. So here's where I will leave it. I'm moving forward. They are stuck in their toxic bubble, and my daughter will grow up knowing her mother refused to bow down to anyone's control. Update 3. I thought supervised visitation and the court process would calm things down, but my husband and his father have decided that instead of behaving like adults, they're going to treat this like some kind of crusade. And because they are both terrible at strategy, it's blowing up in their faces in real time. After the judge put supervised visitation in place, I honestly thought my husband would just grit his teeth and play along quietly until he earned more time. That's what a rational person who wanted to see his child would do, but no. Him and his dad went in the opposite direction. They decided to prove that I am the unfit one. Father-in-law actually filed a formal complaint to the court, claiming that I was mentally unstable because I chose a C-section. Yes, you read that right. His argument was that no mentally sound woman would butcher herself instead of going through a natural delivery. So the fact that I made that choice should be taken as evidence I can't be trusted to parent. He literally attached printouts from fringe websites about the sanctity of natural birth as evidence. My lawyer destroyed it in about 5 minutes. The judge was visibly irritated and told them the court was not going to entertain pseudo-medical nonsense. Watching them both squirm while being lectured was honestly the best thing that was happening all year. But they were not done embarrassing themselves. My husband filed motions claiming I was alienating him from his daughter by not communicating directly. My lawyer calmly presented pages of his text messages, half of them raging insults and the other half pathetic begging, to show exactly why I had moved all contact to my lawyer. The judge agreed and ordered that all future communication must happen through a parenting app that logs every interaction. Guess who immediately slipped up? Yep, my husband. Within 2 days, he wrote a long rant in the app about how his dad says the courts are biased against men and that I'm brainwashed by feminist ideology. Logged, time-stamped, admissible. My lawyer could not stop smiling when she saw it. Then came their boldest and dumbest move yet. My husband filed an emergency petition for unsupervised custody. He did not tell me. I only found out when my lawyer got the notice. In the petition, he claimed I was withholding bonding opportunities and that the child was at risk of not forming a relationship with him. The problem? An emergency petition requires actual evidence of imminent harm. They had none. It was denied almost instantly. Not only denied, but the judge warned them that if they filed any more frivolous motions, sanctions would be considered. My lawyer is already preparing a motion for sanctions, citing wasted court resources and harassment. Meanwhile, their behavior at the visitation center has been a total circus. My father-in-law insists on going with my husband every single time. Instead of quietly sitting there, he constantly interferes. He critiques the way my husband holds the baby, criticizes the supplies I send, makes passive-aggressive comments about me not being there, and even tries to tell the staff how they should run the visits. The center staff have written multiple reports about it, and they've already warned him that he's on thin ice. If he does not stop, they'll ban him from attending visits altogether. The irony is that my husband completely relies on his father during these visits. The reports note that when father-in-law is present, he constantly prompts my husband on what to do. But when staff ask father-in-law to back off, my husband just freezes. He does not know what to do on his own. He sits there awkwardly, barely engaging, until his dad steps in again. It's all on record now. Documented proof that my husband cannot parent without his father literally feeding him instructions. The pattern is clear. Every time they try to attack me, they just expose themselves. The court is not interested in their outdated worldview about real women and heads of household authority. The court wants to see who can provide a safe, stable environment, and so far, they are proving over and over that it's not them. What makes this even better and messier is that their lies keep unraveling. Remember how I found out my husband quit his job during my pregnancy because his dad told him it was demeaning to work under a female manager? Well, now that is part of the custody case too. The court asked for financial disclosures and his showed zero income. He's completely dependent on his parents. Meanwhile, I'm managing with the help of my mom, working part-time from home and showing consistent stability. Guess which side the court favors? And here's a detail I almost feel guilty enjoying. Apparently, their lawyer's getting fed up with him. During the last hearing, he kept pinching the bridge of his nose and sighing every time father-in-law spoke up. At one point, the judge had to remind father-in-law that he's not a party to the custody case, and their lawyer looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. So right now, supervised visitation continues. But my lawyer is pushing for it to become long-term with additional conditions, given how incapable my husband seems without his dad present. If father-in-law gets banned from the center, I honestly do not know how my husband will cope. But that's not my problem. They created this mess. At this point, I don't even have to fight that hard. They are doing the work for me. Every complaint they file, every rant they type, every time father-in-law opens his mouth in front of court staff, it just builds my case stronger. It's like watching someone dig their own grave while insisting they're building a castle. So that's where things stand. It's messy, it's ridiculous, but it's all working in my favor. Update 4. So here's how everything finally shook out. Supervised visitation kept going downhill fast. The staff at the center wrote more and more reports about how my husband was struggling without constant direction from his dad. They noticed that he barely interacted unless someone told him what to do. Even simple things like holding the baby or playing with her required coaching. When the staff stepped in to guide him, he got defensive and sulked instead of listening. The reports painted a clear picture. He was not parenting. He was performing reluctantly under supervision. After several warnings, the center finally barred my father-in-law from attending. They told my husband he could continue his visits alone. But his father was no longer allowed on the property. That is when everything cracked. On his first solo visit, my husband sat in the visitation room like a lost teenager. The staff wrote that he spent most of the time scrolling on his phone, occasionally glancing at the baby, but making almost no effort to engage. When reminded that the time was for him to bond, he muttered that he didn't know what to do. It went on like that for a few weeks. Then he started missing visits altogether. First he claimed he was sick, then he said he had work obligations, still unemployed as far as I know. Then he just stopped giving reasons. The staff reported all of it and my lawyer submitted everything to the court. At the next hearing, the judge asked directly why he was skipping his visits. He blamed me. He said I had poisoned the relationship, made it impossible for him to connect. The judge was not buying it. She pointed to the visitation reports showing that he barely participated when he was there. She told him bluntly that parenting is an active role, not something that just happens automatically. He looked stunned, like no one had ever spelled it out for him before. The breaking point came when the judge asked him if he wanted to continue visitation. Instead of answering yes and promising to do better, he launched into a rant about how he should not have to prove himself as a father, how a man's role is being disrespected in today's society, and how this entire process was beneath him. He went on and on, quoting his dad almost word for word until the judge cut him off. After that, the judge made her ruling. Supervised visitation would continue for 3 more months, but if he missed again or refused to participate, it would be suspended indefinitely. She made it very clear that the responsibility was entirely his. No more excuses, no more blaming me, no more hiding behind his father. Since then, he's missed every single visit. He's not shown up once, not one. The court has already scheduled a follow-up to review the situation, but my lawyer says it's basically a done deal. If he keeps refusing, visitation will be suspended, not terminated. He could apply again later if he ever pulled himself together, but cut off until then. What's almost surreal is how quiet it's gotten since then. My phone used to blow up daily with angry messages. His dad used to rant non-stop, but now nothing. It's like they gave up the second the court told him it was on him alone. I expected them to keep fighting, but without father-in-law physically present to stir things up, my husband just faded out. It feels strange. For months, everything was a battle. I was constantly bracing for the next stunt, the next ridiculous motion, the next outburst in court. Now there's just silence, and instead of feeling guilty or sad, I feel relieved. Because the truth is, he showed exactly who he is when he could not lean on his dad. When it was just him and his child, he chose to walk away. This is not on me. That is not something I caused. That is him. The case is not officially closed yet, but everyone knows where it's heading. My lawyer says we'll likely have it wrapped up soon, with custody resting entirely with me, unless he makes some miraculous turnaround. She doubts he will. Honestly, so do I. Update 5. Hi, one last update for everyone who stuck around. The case is officially over. The divorce was finalized last week and custody was awarded entirely to me. My ex did not contest it in the end. He never showed up to the last 2 hearings. The judge suspended his visitation indefinitely due to his repeated no-shows and lack of effort. If he ever wants to reapply, he'd have to prove stability, employment, and completion of parenting classes. But honestly, I doubt he will. So that is it. I walked into this as a wife and walked out as a single mom with full custody. It's not the life I imagined, but it's a life where my daughter and I are safe and where no one else gets to dictate my choices ever again. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.